hello, welcome to Unbelievable, the show where we get Christians and non-Christians talking. I'm your host, Andy Kine. Today we are in a school in Aylesbury and we're talking about the soul and spiritual experiences. My guests today are, on my right, Harry Amos, who is a non-Christian, a humanist and a very sound thinker. And to my left, we have Dr Claire Gilbert. Let's get some more information about them. So, Harry, give us your backstory. How did you end up here?
Sure, thanks, Andy. So, I guess starting with school, I went to, just like your good selves, a Church of England school. That was primary, however, and I'm obviously aware you're secondary. Secondary school-wise, I went to a secular grammar school, and it was in secular school, funnily enough, that I actually became a Christian. And I did so through the influence of my brother, who came back from an evangelical kind of summer camp. He's 7 years older than me, so he was around 18. I was about 11. And it was the change in him. I'd always loved him, he was always great, but he started to care about issues like climate change, poverty, and I started to wonder, well, is that what Christianity, the good news, is about? And I respected that, so I investigated. I started going to an evangelical Church of England church, and then I, as people would say, gave my life to the Lord Jesus, and wind forward to, and I led Christian Union. I was very, very committed for a long period of time. I went to university. I studied philosophy, politics, and economics at the University of Warwick. And during that time, I became increasingly skeptical about the claims historically in the Bible. And over time, that skepticism expanded to other areas, such as, did Jesus rise from the dead? Is there a God? What are we? What is our purpose if there is no God? Many of the things that we're about to talk about. Yeah. But that is a potted journey, if you like, to me.
And a very good one. Thanks for potting that up for us, Harry. Now, Claire, what about you? Some backstory from you.
Bit of backstory. Well, I was christened in the Church of England as a baby, as people usually were, without really thinking about it. Parents did that, but I was also involved. Well, my parents were involved with a very Eastern-looking cult. So my upbringing was actually more Platonic and Hindu than Christian. But when I was, my mother died when I was 12 of cancer, and it can't be unrelated that I made my mind up that I would be confirmed, and I got confirmed. And all through my teenage years, I would go to just a very quiet early morning service at my local Church of England church. But I was also in this Eastern-facing organisation, so there was a bit of compartmentalising going on there. I read theology at Oxford, which was such a dry degree. I can't tell you. I was reading people who were basically trying to organise God and explain everything, and I sort of instinctively didn't get that until I met this wonderful woman writer called Julian of Norwich, who wrote about some visions that she had, and she wrote about them in a way that absolutely did not try to organise God. She told us what she saw, and when there were contradictions in what she saw with what the church had told her, she didn't say, well, I'll choose one over the other. She said, I will keep both of these in my heart, and we'll see what happens. She's a really astonishing writer. I worked in medical ethics for 10 years at King's College London. Very secular environment, fantastically intellectually rigorous, but I was very aware that we were talking about ethical analysis with people whose hearts were breaking. So if you're with your dying child, you're not thinking, what would Kant's categorical imperative tell me to do here, or what's the utilitarian answer? Your heart is breaking. And so I was very aware we didn't have the language for that kind of feeling. We were just thinking. And so I moved to work for the Church of England as its advisor on medical ethics, but also environmental ethics, and became very interested in spirituality in the environment, because I believe our ecological crisis, or I have come to believe, our ecological crisis is caused by it's a spiritual crisis, first of all. And the change in the way we live with the world needs to start with our spirits. So I wrote about that. I then became a lay canon at St Paul's Cathedral and founded an institute for ethics there. And I moved to Westminster Abbey and founded an institute for ethics there, working with public servants, with politicians, civil servants, lawyers, police, armed forces, artists, scientists, everybody who regarded themselves as public servants we would work with, of people of any faith or no faith. I did that for 10 years. While I was there, I had the opportunity to write a doctorate on Julian of Norwich and the ecological crisis, which showed me that, or she showed me that the way to respond to the earth is porously, responsively, not as something to be controlled and dominated and turned into matter which will serve us, but something to be served, as it says as God commands Adam in the second creation story, Genesis chapter 2. The year after I defended my thesis, I was diagnosed with myeloma, which is a cancer of the blood. And I went through 2.5 years of really grueling treatment. This is in 2018. And Julian of Norwich stopped being the subject of my academic research, and she became my companion and friend. And she taught me, through her writing, how to face and even love the cancer, believe it or not. She helped me see that the cancer could be a source of joy, not a source of bitterness. And when I came to the end of that time of treatment, I heard a call, is the only way I can describe it, to tell her story with the same honest voice that I discovered in writing about the cancer. So I've written loads of books on ethics and philosophy and medical ethics, all very intellectual, but this was from the heart. This writing about my cancer was from the heart. So I thought I'd like to tell your story, Julian. I wasn't sure if she'd let me, because I put it in the first person. But honestly, writing that book was like praying. It came from such a deep place within me to tell her story. And that book, it's a fictional autobiography. We know so little about Julian, and it has to be a story, not a biography. And it's hit a nerve. People are very interested in her spirituality, which is basically one of overwhelming love. And I feel that she's still teaching me, actually. Mm-hmm. I did eventually leave this culty thing that I was grown up in, and found that the Church of England specifically, and its quiet way of just carrying on, was a tremendous emotional refuge. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with the Church of England for many years now, mainly trying to get it to share its wonderful treasury with the rest of the world, which seems to me to be so thirsty for depth. The people we work with in Westminster were so busy trying to rule and run the country, and desperate for it was like giving water to a brittle sponge or something like that, to get the church to share this depth with the world around it, which is in so much need.
Wonderful. So we're talking about the soul and spiritual experiences. Now, Harry, anyone who knows you or has seen you on Unbelievable before knows that whilst you're currently not a Christian, you're not cynical, you're not anti-Christian people. You just currently don't believe that there is a God. So from your perspective then, when Christians start to use phrases like the soul or the spirit, what does that do for you? How would you want to counter that in your own terms?
Sure. So I guess the very first thing, as you mentioned, is what is a soul? What do we mean by it? How can we define it? So I would say, and feel free to disagree if you like, Claire, but something along the lines of an immaterial essence within a person that is beyond just the body, beyond the mind, but is the exact nature of a human being. And you can't taste it, touch it, measure it. So this idea of there being both body, mind, soul is dualism. And I'm fully aware that you guys have all had a good lesson on dualism and its associated topics. So in a philosopher's survey, for example, recently, of about 2,000 academic philosophers, the likes that you would have perhaps been taught by, around 80% of them reject dualism. So it would be wrong of me to suggest that that is somehow proof in any way, shape or form that a soul does not exist, but rather that there is an element of what is called in philosophy the burden of proof. I do not claim to know or be able to show or anything along those lines that a soul does not exist, but I am not making the claim that it does. Anyone who claims something ought to provide evidence for it, and fundamentally, I don't see evidence for the soul. How could we go about finding out any evidence for the soul? Perhaps inference to the best explanation, and that phrasing meaning, well, we can't taste, touch, measure, do any science on the soul. However, does it explain anything else in our life, such as love, or thinking, or feeling, or creativity? Can we explain these in just material terms? And I guess we can perhaps, go back to that. But this mind-body problem, what does a soul actually explain? That is kind of quite key, is does it actually explain anything versus what we are already discovering through science and scientific inquiry? And what do we already know to exist that we can kind of rely on to construct an explanation around how the mind functions? So we already know things exist, such as energy, information, matter, and then we don't have any evidence of anything supernatural, although I'm sure you'll dispute that. I think this idea of consciousness as something otherworldly is similar to a philosophy that used to exist called Vitalism. Vitalism is kind of the idea that organic chemistry, life, is really different from non-life, inorganic chemistry. There must be something more. It's not made of the same stuff. It's two completely different things. There is a life, a vita, that imbues life with the functions that it does. Now, I just find myself in that kind of position of, say, being a person in the 14th century, like Julian of Norwich. I am in the position of, in time, of almost like being a dog trying to understand a newspaper. It's a case of, well, we are starting to discover some things. And I think dualism, this idea of a soul, almost, it implies that we know the limitations of what the physical can do or does. And I just think that is false. We know, for example, and perhaps your physics lessons haven't necessarily covered it, but we live in a world of quantum mechanics, virtual particles, antimatter, general relativity. I won't bother to explain all of those terms, but take general relativity, for example, Albert Einstein's famous theory. We live in a four-dimensional universe. Time and space are not different, but one and the same. But we don't perceive that. We don't realize it. Quantum mechanics, that particles are both waves and also matter at the same time, and that two particles can be in a superposition of states. Virtual particles pop in and out of existence. All these things just blow our minds. I couldn't mathematically write them down and explain them to you, but I am in that position of going, wow, that's incredible. Do I see anything beyond that? I don't. if I can just continue for one moment, some of the best things I have looked at in coming and kind of just preparing some thoughts for the debate. So, for example, we are in labs growing, and I'm sure there's medical ethics around this, but mini brains, neurons, organoids, to use the technical term that's being bounded around, and they're even being taught to play Pong. I don't know if you've seen the kind of old, it's like 1970s computer game with the two blocks going up and down. They've actually taught these mini brains how to play Pong. And feel free to look this up in your own time, but it's the kind of thing that is fascinating, and we are learning little by little. Qualia is a philosophical concept, again, just throwing a term out there. The idea that there is something qualitative. Is when I see red, is it the same as when you see red? Well, how could I know? I'm not Andy, I'm not Claire. What would I, it could be completely different. When I see red, they could see blue, but we'd both call it the same thing. Yeah. But brain science has already started to just pick at this idea that there is something magical going on here. People have been put into an fMRI scanner, a functional magnetic resonance imaging, fancy medical device that shows you your brain. And they have live scanned people seeing colours, reds and so on, and the same portions of their brain are lighting up. And we know, therefore, as to the best of our knowledge, that when I see red, you're seeing red, and we're seeing the same colour when we're doing so. Yeah. And so this idea of qualia is already starting to be unpicked. I kind of see it as a bit of a demystifying of something that is held up as a mystery. I will pause there.
You certainly will.
But that's given, hopefully, people something to think about.
Yes, well, thank you very much, and thank you for preparing so nicely for that, sir. Claire, we'll come to you now. I mean, obviously, I don't know many Christian apologists, people who argue for the existence of Christianity, who would use an argument from the existence of a soul. So we're wanting to have more of a conversation about it here rather than looking to, knock each other's arguments down with instant defeaters. But what's your thoughts? What are your feelings about the idea of a soul? It's a bit of an elusive term, even within Christian circles, isn't it? So, Claire, how would you want to join the conversation there?
Well, to be honest, Harry, you're sounding a little bit like the theologians I had to read as an undergraduate, sorting the world out, organising it, putting it out there, explaining it. And if I've learnt anything over the many years I've been thinking about these things, studying these things, being in the world with these things, and particularly in relation to our response to the environment, that way of thinking needs to shift. So we are children of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment taught us that mind and matter are separate, that humans have rationality, nothing else does, and to quote Descartes, we can become masters and possessors of nature. And out of that came the Industrial Revolution, which gave us many, 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 many helpful, useful, wonderful things like water that came out of taps and the steam engine, things that you and I in the global north enjoy the benefits of, but which is now killing the planet. And we're bringing that mindset, that controlling, organising, othering mindset to trying to solve the problem. And my contention is that mindset, because it's what caused the problem, is unlikely to solve it. So even as we come up with amazing technological ideas, solar panels, windmills, we find there are new problems. So there's the lithium in the batteries, for example. We keep finding more problems. There's a need for a complete turnaround. And so I don't live in that world anymore of is it dualism, mind and matter separate. And my cancer taught me this in it so deeply that we are not separate from our bodies, but neither are our bodies separate from spirit. And the things that really matter, they have a life. I can't put it somewhere else, but my word, are we infused by it? And I can't not feel that. It's not a question of deciding to believe or not believe or being persuaded by some rational argument. That was what was so wonderful about Julian of Norwich. She said, I saw this and I felt this and this is what I understood from it. And I don't know. She would say that and I would say that. I don't know. We don't know. It would be so arrogant to claim that we do know that much even about the physical universe, let alone what's within it and within it and within it and within it. But we can have a sense that there is something so lively and creative going on that you can't objectify, actually, because it's happening in here and it's happening over there and they're connected. We really understand this much better than we ever did before, that we are deeply, deeply interconnected. And what I do here is going to affect what happens over there and a million miles away and in space. Nothing is disconnected from anything else. So there's a kind of surrendering in humility to this extraordinary universe, and to even, I don't know what, I mean, of course you can't prove the soul. What a ridiculous thought.
Yeah, Harry.
or by
I
the same
agree.
token. I'm honestly with you. I'm sure I just wouldn't talk like that. So one of the things I do now, having run this institution, worked a lot with people who are public servants and seen how what I would say was their soul is being done violence to by the kind of work that they have to do. If you think about what a politician has to do, the decisions they have to make with not enough information, and they have to make decisions because if you don't make decisions, the country goes to pieces. You have to be decisive. That is what leadership is, making decisions even when you don't have all the knowledge and taking responsibility for them. And everybody hates you. Whatever you do, you're going to get it wrong. And you have people, and I'm afraid I particularly see it with the women, but I think the men are just putting on a show as well, who will put on this carapace, this public face, which they will show to the world, and that's what we all see. That's why they always sound a bit inauthentic when they're speaking, because they're showing the world. But my God, behind that face is a wobbly old soul like the rest of us. And the work that we did at Westminster Abbey was to work with those souls, not just Christian souls, let's say. Everybody had this. And I stopped doing that to become a full-time writer, but I also do what I call, for want of a better name, soul mentoring. Because I see people struggling to do well in the world, struggling to do the right thing in the world, and not paying attention to what's going on inside them. And I don't know what to call that if I don't call it soul. I could perhaps call it heart, but it's the thing. And we need to look after our souls. I don't know what they are, but we have to look after them.
But it's to do with the worth of an individual, isn't it?
Certainly. Yeah.
You talked about Descartes' idea of the qualia, the inner experience of things, and that doesn't have to just be the colour red. That can be the inner experience of joy or hope. So if the debate had been called, can you prove that there's a soul? Claire basically threw in her own towel, didn't she? So fortunately, it's not that.
Right, I'm out.
Yeah. Victorious. The king has left the building.
Nope.
So what do you think then about the soul being more to do with someone's sense of worth and value? Because as someone who's a humanist, you absolutely agree with Christians that human beings are, for some peculiar reason, valuable beyond the sum total of their parts, don't you? So we'll just let you speak into that, Harry.
Sure, thank you. I would like to stress several points of agreement with Claire. So humility is very, very important, and I agree intellectually, and that's why I emphasize my agnosticism around these things. I have no ability and no desire even to disprove the existence of a soul, however we define that. Ethically, mindfully, intellectually, we should look after the environment. And I agree that in many senses, we need both a heart, mind, whatever you wish to call it, and a kind of effectiveness approach. In Oxford, I imagine, and I as a humanist will often use kind of the term effective altruism, meaning altruism is to be nice, to care about people, to be ethical, essentially, and effective being kind of the brainy part. How do you actually do that the most effectively that you can? You could, say, put £1 million into feeding one cat as best as you possibly can, the best food, the most healthy cat. But perhaps there are other more effective ways you could spend that £1 million. So I think it needs a synthesis, definitely, of those two. I would very much emphasise worth, value. We agree on those things. I suppose we might place them in slightly different terminologically different categories, I suppose. So why do I value other human beings? If I was to put it simply, empathy. I almost can't help but care for you, for example. When I read about and I hear about your story, your experience with cancer, for example, I think about my own mother's experience with cancer, and I know how difficult it was for her, and I love her very much, and I want to be there for her as a fellow human being that I care about. And that extends to everyone, not as much as I would like, and science can kind of explain why we tend to value those closest to us, whether that's genetically or just in terms of our familiarity, quite a bit. But we can park that there for a minute.
Yeah, I suppose it, again, we want to talk about, I want to get on to spiritual experiences. So if you guys have got questions about spiritual experiences, we can do that in the Q&A session. But I suppose there's a difference, isn't there, Harry, between science showing why it is that we value those people closest to us and it actually being true that those people are valuable.
True.
So the fact that we can feel a sense of value in other people doesn't mean objectively that they are valuable, which again I think brings us back towards the idea of this sense of essence and worth above and beyond the physical. But please carry on with
personally, and this is part of a continual interest and agnosticism, listening, being part of these discussions, I wouldn't say I necessarily have the most satisfying answer to some of the points, the issues that you talk about. But I guess what I can say when it comes to why people have value is just, I care, fundamentally. And
you care, therefore you are.
I care, therefore I am, exactly. And I can't force you to care about me. How could I?
We do though, don't we, Claire? We do
how
care.
Could
we
I
do
do
care
that?
about him.
I can't change your mind other than try and persuade you that you should care about me, that there's a reciprocity.
But hang
Society.
on.
Okay.
There is no argument you could construct that would make me care about you. It doesn't come from that place.
I agree.
It comes from your heart. You know, it comes from something that your mind is probably never going to get around.
Just to be clear, Claire isn't saying that Harry can't do anything to make her care about him. She's not saying that she doesn't care.
Yes.
She's just saying that.
Yeah.
No, the point is the care comes out of who we are, not out of a rational argument that we agree with or disagree with.
I think
You know, this is quite a helpful distinction. You have a text, let's say it's a philosophical text, and it's constructing arguments, and you decide whether you agree or disagree with the arguments, and you make your reasons for why you agree or disagree. And then you have a poem or a great painting, and you look at it, and it breaks your heart. Or you fall in love with it. You have a response to it that's not rational, and it's not appropriate to try and pick that apart. You want to allow the experience and not destroy it by trying to be rational about it.
So conscious of time, there is one thing that I would be curious to explore with you. The idea of, say, worth and value and lots of other things, say love, creativity, beauty, these things being explained by the soul. I guess I mentioned that at the start, so it's almost coming full circle. What has souls? Do animals have souls? When does ensoulment, as I put it, occur? When do people get their souls? Do the neurons, the mini brains in the... I'm being a little bit facetious there, but people do wonder, you know, does my dog have a soul?
Yes, they do, and they're the wrong questions. When I was doing medical ethics, this question of when does the soul go into the fetus, and then we can decide when it's okay to have an abortion. It just doesn't work. We don't know what the soul is, and maybe it's a name we give something. But like, do dogs have soul? I mean, can we just not separate each other out like this? Can we just respond in love to everything that's around us? Everything, whether it's a stone or a dog or you or you, just let it be not objectified. And actually, so you decide dogs do have souls or dogs don't have souls. What then? Because the decision about whether or not you, say, put a dog down, that's when these things come up, or very topically, when it's appropriate to end a life. The law is just, the Parliament is considering this now. The presence or absence of a thing, it just doesn't work. Believe me, I've been in these debates. It doesn't work to think like that. And it doesn't work to say, well, I don't know, the soul explains things. It's just, it's a word that you can use that isn't brain. Yeah. It's the thing, but it's let me try it this way. It's the thing that inspires you. So you may be surrounded by a really, really, really difficult situation. Think of the world today and the kinds of situations people are in all over the world. But if there's a sense of hope or love or kindness, these sorts of things can help people survive and get through and not sit down and give up. It's not rational, but it works in a way that other things just don't.
Sure. We'll give Harry just a little bit of time to respond, but then we're going to go straight into questions. So do have hands ready to go up.
I'm looking forward to the questions. So I guess, again, there are many points of agreement, and I would say, on the one hand, you've kind of, in a way, you, at least to me, it suggests that a soul doesn't explain as much as perhaps we want it to when we invoke it. That's why I prefer terms like sentience. I can look and say, right, is there a sentient life here that looks, I don't know, you could be, I look at you and I see the same as me and I say,
I'm completely AI.
You could be a robot. I don't know that. I'm not in your brain.
This isn't the right way to think, Harry. So what is not sentient? Or rather, what do we not invest? So let's imagine Andy's AI.
I've said I am, though. So
yes, let's imagine he is. Well, okay, this is one of the weird things about AI if you're a robot. I don't know if you saw any of the films. We, humans, invest the AI with, you might call it sentience, because that's what we're like. And we start. Do you remember do you see the film Castaway? And Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks. He had a football, and he painted a face on it.
Wilson. Called it Wilson, yeah.
And he talked to it. So this was his way of coping. It was kind of funny. And then one day, Wilson got swept out to sea, and he was absolutely heartbroken. Well, it was just a little football. this tells you about us, the way we respond. And this is the problem with what's sentient, what isn't sentient. It doesn't really answer the question, when do you have abortion, when do you end a life? And it doesn't answer the question about how you treat the universe around you. Because all of it matters if we are to learn as humans how to live on the earth without harming it. All of it matters. And that is almost impossible to deal with. And our rational Enlightenment ways of dealing with it can't really cope. So you say you have £1 million to spend. What's the best way to spend it? Well, look at our billionaires who think they're making the world a better place. Are they? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, thingy, Facebook chat.
Mark Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg. I mean, they, altruism, but I mean, you don't want to have too much money because you're probably going to make a mess with it,
Right, let's move on to some questions then. First of all, give them a round of applause because they've both spoken very cogently. So, first question, it really is Soul Questions 101. We'll start with you, Harry. What do you think will happen when you die, or when a person dies? I want to make you feel like this is it.
Oh no. Thanks for the question. So, for me, I make assumptions about what I am going to be. I look at, okay, well, as far as I can tell, before I was born, during Julian of Norwich's time, I was completely unconscious. I didn't know what was going on. And that was when I had nothing like the composition that I do now. When I am after death, that kind of is it. Your brain activity shrinks, and yes, you return to Mother Earth, if you will. You die, and that makes life, in my view, so precious. It is so important to spend it as well as you can, whether it is having these kinds of discussions and finding our values, or helping out with the environment. You can do that in all sorts of wonderful local ways. Think about the way that you're living and sustainability and things like this. But to answer your question, I don't think there's anything more after we die.
Claire, what about you?
I'm just trying to imagine you before you were born, because there was something, you're saying. You were around, just not sentient.
Well, in terms of the atoms, for example,
yeah,
that made me,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, fair enough.
Matter cannot be created or destroyed,
yes, okay,
only
so
conserved and changed.
Yeah.
But
fair enough.
the sentience of me was not around. I didn't know. So I don't fear death. I do potentially fear the process of dying, but I think that's natural because it's often not as nice as it could be.
Well, I don't know what happens after we die either. But what I do have a sense of is the eternity of God, which never stops. And actually, that's all I can say.
That's a pretty good answer.
I guess
I think that again, it's the problem of too much individualism, and it's all about me and what happens to me before, what happens to me afterwards. I don't know, but God doesn't stop.
If I can just add two quick things on the end of that. So to some extent, I agree. Again, I like to find points of agreement between us. So I agree that we focus individually. Well, after I'm gone, what is going to exist? The community around me, the legacy I leave behind, that is in a way what I ought to care about most. And yeah, I also do not know what happens after we die. There's only one way to find out, and I'll wait before I find that out.
Yeah. Well, it's a high-risk game, that, Harry. So follow up to the previous one. Do you think that your views on life after death will change? We'll start with you, Claire. You've talked about the eternality of God, and presumably that's something that you're well versed in and quite dug in with. So could you see that changing?
Well, I can't see God changing. What I understand of God is going to change all the time, continually changes all the time. We're just humans and we don't know very much. I hope I never come to conclusions about anything. Honestly, as you get older, you can conclude less and less and less. And I also have fewer and fewer views because whatever the view is, there's always a counter argument, and I'd rather just listen and absorb and learn. And I mean, the other thing is, it doesn't make any difference what I think. What happens will happen.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to rest in that. What I can't do, and I have found this all my life, I can't deny God. I just can't. It's not. I can't say this is something I came to believe in, and then I'll stop believing in it. I just can't deny God. So, whatever. And the word God is.
Yeah.
What do we mean by that?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. And Harry, you've already changed your view once. I mean, do you see yourself doing a hokey cokey throughout your life?
Absolutely. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yes, rather than 6 feet under.
Yeah.
So I guess the jokey answer is, will I change my view? Well, it depends on who's right. If I'm right, then no, I won't change my mind. If I'm wrong, then I will. And at that point, some people would argue it's too late. But I completely, I guess, agree with that sense of, well, whatever will happen, yes. Yeah. And so I focus on the best of what I can know and what I can do. Yeah. But the fact that I'm here and the fact that I have changed my mind so substantially about really key things that you said you can't deny, for example, I think illustrates that I'm very happy to change my mind. Yeah.
Just quickly then, I'll ask this question because we are coming to the end. Well, Harry, stay with you. People throughout time and throughout the world, probably lots of people in this room, have had what they would describe as spiritual experiences. Things that cannot simply be accounted for by confirmation bias, can't seemingly be reduced to coincidence or the power of the brain. There's this idea that there is something left over once all those things are taken into account. From your current perspective, where would you assign spiritual experiences for people?
Okay, I'll try and be quick. I myself had what I would call spiritual experiences as a Christian, an evangelical Christian, and having analysed them, and I know that might potentially be a problematic term, but having looked or reviewed at them, I can't see any supernatural explanation for them. I can only see the natural. I can't and pretend to answer everybody's claims that they have about spiritual experiences, because firstly, they are unique to each individual, and they, as you say, they're global. But from those I have looked at carefully as I can, acknowledging my own biases, I haven't found anything that compels me, that I can't look at and say, as you have said, biases, brains, and again, feel free, you can always look up and listen to your friends' accounts and take them seriously, but consider what hypothesis is more plausible to you.
Yeah. And I suppose what a Christian might say, I mean, you'll say what you want to say, Claire, but I suppose there is a difference, isn't there, between looking at sheet music with notes on a page. That is not the music as we hear it. So I suppose you could say, in response to what Harry is saying, that okay, yeah, you can write down all these notes as they occur, but that doesn't give you the experience, the transcendental experience of music. And I wonder whether it's a bit like that with spiritual experiences.
Well, I think that's a really, really good analogy. So so music is the playing and the hearing of it, not notes on the page. And it is extraordinarily difficult, and we know this in the writings over the centuries. It is extraordinarily difficult to describe something which is beyond words. And Wittgenstein said, best to be silent. If there aren't words for it, best to be silent. But I'm awfully glad that there have been writers who have tried to write. For example, Julian of Norwich, the author of The Cloud of Unknowing. Other amazing writers who have tried to describe what this ephemeral, this thing is, because I think it helps us. But it's true, my own prayer is mostly silent prayer, contemplative prayer, because the words just get in the way of the simple experience or response to God. So in as much as I have spiritual experiences, they are in silence and depth and presence and warmth and love, and there aren't limits on it.
Yeah. Great.
Hard to describe.
Well, we haven't necessarily worked out whether there's a soul or what happens after death, but there certainly is life after school. Thanks for watching Unbelievable, and on behalf of all the team here, we'll see you again. Goodbye.